Jess from Range Care here again. Today we're joined with our lovely board member, Nita. What are you going to take us through today?
Oh, yes, Jess. I thought today we would draw an apple. They're always in your kitchen, and we'll do an inside and an outside of an apple. And the equipment that you'll need is, of course, a beautiful piece of paper, a pencil or graphite, your eraser, a sharpener, and some colour pencils.
Great, let's get started.
So starting with your apple, the important thing to think about is to have the apple at an angle so that you can see the centre from which the stalk comes from. This is an excellent example because it's a nice long one. But don't have your apple straight forward like this. Place your apple as this one's been placed so you can see into the centre. So, starting with your apple that you've set at near eye level is a really convenient spot, with your graphite pencil that's reasonably sharp, and have your rubber nearby and your clean piece of paper. So first of all, sketch your apple, but don't put the stalk in. So let's just sketch our apple first. And it's a rough, every apple is different, so you can't be wrong. So there's a little bit of an apple. Then the next thing, as you can see, and let's have a look at the ideas that we have here. There's our outline first, as you can see from the apple. Then we're going to put the stalk in, and then this little line, which is this section here on the apple. Then with the graphite pencil, we'll do a tonal shading, and then introduce some colour pencil until it starts to look a little bit like your coloured apple. So they're the stages that we work through. And you have a pattern in your mind of what you're going to be doing. So, as I said, stage number one, just do a rough outline, but don't put the stalk in. Then you may put your stalk in, so I'm going to do my rough outline again so that you don't have to do a dozen little apples, but I'm doing the dozen little apples. So there's my stalk. It's two lines, reasonably parallel, but they can be a bit boppy because often the stalks are uneven. And it comes down not to the top, as you can see, but down into the apple. So here's my outline again, and I'll just put that in. I'll put in my stalk, and then you need that little line there. And now it really starts to look like an apple. So they're the first three, and now this time you've got your drawing, I'm going to do my apple again, and so if I'm going a little bit too fast or too slow, well then you can gauge yourself with my speed as well. So this apple shape, I'm going to actually do the shading as you can see here. Now if you notice here, there's a dark side, that's on this one, and there's a light side. So there's more graphite from your pencil, your graphite pencil, that I've put on this side of the apple as compared with this side. Now there's one other really important thing that all drawers must remember, is you keep some highlights. And highlights are where there are no colour, no graphite. And you do them fairly large, and then you can make them smaller afterwards. So you've now drawn yourself an apple with the stalk and this little curvy line. So now with your pencil, you can hold your pencil in two ways. You can lie it down and pick it up like this so you have pressure on here to vary the amount of graphite that goes onto the apple, or you can hold it and do it this way. So you decide. I'm going to do probably a little bit of a mixture. So I generally start on the dark side, and look, you can see I actually write a little hint for myself. So let's put dark side here. Because if we were interrupted and we come back to the apple, we can remember where the dark side is. So starting down here, you can just do a little bit of shading. Try not to get too many lines, I'm getting a few, but they'll start to settle out. And you can see how I'm taking it up the side. And I'm not going this way across the apple because the apple actually has streaks coming. So that's the way I'm using my tool. If you go over the edge, don't worry, you can always rub it out, because that's what's good about graphite. And if you make it too dark, we just rub a little bit of it out. So it's really easy. And it's quite relaxing. Sometimes you go to sleep. So never mind. You could always rub out what you've made as a mistake. So just keep working and enjoying what you're doing. And around here we're curving this way this time, because that's the way we're working up the apple. When you're coming in behind the stalk, you move from the lower part of the stalk and move your pencil that way, out towards the edge of the apple. So you're streaking, and it starts to make it look as though that's going into the apple. And you can turn your page, so don't be afraid to turn your page around. Always come back and put a little bit more graphite down this dark side, and you can see it starts to actually become smooth. So what you thought was a little bit streaky and not so happy, now you can start to see the pencil with graphite starts to smooth that out. You can turn this around and come onto this side. Remembering starting down near the stalk and out to the edge, so it's a nice curve. And around the edge of the apple, so you're getting that shape. So one of the really important things is to rotate your page so that you're comfortable and you're not trying to draw something against the line. Now, this little curvy part here, if you look at the top here, you can see how we've started to work from that line. So there's the line. So what we do is we ground the pencil, ground on that line, and then flick out. And flick out in a little bit of a curve. Not the best at the moment, but it will improve. And when you're tired of doing that, just go back and do a little bit more over here. And put in some longer lines. You can bring in some longer lines from here. You can see how there's some longer lines here. Just break it up a little bit. Apples are all different, as we said earlier, so it's the shape was the important thing. This outline was the important part. And look, that's starting to look a bit like an apple. And if you've gone over the edge with a small eraser, or, sorry, we did have the larger one, you can just go along and neaten your edge. And so that just tidies it up. So there's not a problem if you've accidentally gone over the edge. I've got a few white parts here, so just smoothing those in. You can be a little bit darker on the dark side. Remember the dark side of the apple? A little bit messy here, so we just smooth that out a little bit. You can play with this over a period of time. What I often do is, about this stage, I leave it and go and have a coffee or walk in the garden or whatever, and come back and think, I could add a few more dark lines here. If you've gone too dark, let's pretend you've gone over here and you put in a really dark place and you don't want that dark place, just rub it out. Just gently. Just with long, thin lines, but gently, and you can just erase if there's a section that you're not happy with. If there's a section here, look, I have a loop. If I don't want that loop, because it's graphite, you can just rub it out. So it's very relaxing and quite enjoyable. So that's quite different from this one, because this one actually I've put some little bit of soft. When you pick it up this way, you end up with some little bit of soft colour. So try doing a little bit of soft with your pencil held this way. And turn your page It just softens it a little tiny bit. Be a little bit careless in places because it's an apple and they're all different. Now see that nice highlight? That's really important. If you just colour it flat straight on, then your 2D shape that we started with will then become 2D again. But when we do it like this, and particularly a little bit more here, the 2D apple drawing, which are these, start to look 3D because you have different tones. And the highlight is very important. Now you say, what about the stalk? So here's the stalk. Now the stalk's quite easy and quite quick to do. Remember the dark side. So go to the dark side of your stalk and you're doing this movement. So it's a curve because the stalk is curved. So ground it on the edge of the line and curve with little curvy lines. So they're just little soft lines. There's the line, making it bigger, and you're curving it like that. And you're just doing a flick. And it's curved a little bit. And just do that. And you can do it unevenly because stalks, if you have a look, you know, there's dark parts and light parts and bumps. So the more interesting you make your drawing, the more realistic it looks. So you can put a dark section for a little bump. And it turns out really well then. Just make sure that these lines are joining, not separate like this. Just make sure you put them in between. So even though it's not hard to do, it really does need a little bit of special time put into the stalk. And there's your stalk. So that's your graphite drawing. And of course you'll come back and got some lines there so we can fix those up. A little bit more down here. You can see that you can just keep having a good time. But let's do some colour. Colour's really interesting. So you look at your apple and you say, what's the base colour of the apple? And the base colour is a yellow. And then the other colours, there is the red or an orangey colour, and sometimes, these are very mature apples as you can see, sometimes there's some nice green. So find your yellow, nice bright yellow, a nice bright red, and then a darker red if you have it, but if not we can use a brown. And then I've selected a couple of greens. So I'm going to do, as I did here, a base. So I'll just quickly draw in another apple with my stalk and the curve. So now that's a very poor drawing. Now why is that a poor drawing? See how this line of the apple here is finishing in a different place to that? So they must be the same. So let's just alter this a little bit. So you can actually draw through the stalk if you like, but they must be sort of be similar. You can't have them in a different place. So there's my stalk. All right, so we have a graphite outline and we're going to start adding some yellow colour pencil. Now the hint here is that when you do your colour pencil, don't go over the graphite line to start with. So let's just leave that. Now you have your form, your drawing, where it's dark on one side and a little bit softer on the other. You do the same thing. As you can see here, there's more yellow on this side than there is on that side. So now let's do this. Same action as you use with the graphite pencil, but let's put some bright colour, but don't go over the graphite. And just enjoy it. The colour pencil is softer and it will go on faster. And come around, do the same actions. If you don't want to, if your apple isn't yellow based and you want to use another colour, or if you want to be psychedelic and make a blue apple, by all means, go for it. But put in your dark side and your light side and keep this highlight. So it doesn't take very long at all. Now, you need your rubber or your eraser. I like this little fine one, but you can use the point and you rub out the graphite lines. And you can now, because the yellow did not go over the graphite line. If it went over the graphite line, and I'll show you. So here's a graphite line, and I've gone over it with the yellow. Well then, see, I can't rub it out without rubbing out the yellow. So you can see why it's really handy not to go over. But you still have the shape of your apple because you've coloured it in with the, let me use my nice little one. Alright, so now you've got your yellow base drawn. And you can be reasonably rough with it. Right, looking at my apple, the next colour says it's a light reddy colour or orange. I just brought the red and just go over in places. As you can see here, that was a yellow base as that one, and I just built in colour. Now the red's not as soft as the yellow, so it will become a little bit streaky, but that's handy with apples. And just build it up, but don't colour it in and make the yellow all disappear. You want the yellow to look through as the apple has. If you have a look, the yellow is showing through the red. So that's the trick of doing a beautiful apple. But keep these actions going. Now, if you're working on top of this graphite, you get in there with a dirty hand, which I am, maybe a tissue or a cloth would be good to cover this. So I'm going to find another piece of paper and just pop it on top of there so I'm not spreading the graphite everywhere. So it's just the same action again, but just you're using colour. Now, colour pencil you can rub out, but it's a little more difficult and sometimes it might leave a little bit of a shadow on the page. So try to be a little accurate, particularly along the edges. This is looking scratchy, but never mind. So come in here with that same action. And again, ground it on that arc that you drew. But I'm tired of this colour, so I'm going to put some green in. I'll come back to it, but now you can start putting some green. More green on in a particular spot, mate, but keep your highlight, please. Don't lose your highlight. And don't put it everywhere, just pop it somewhere in certain places. Then you can go back to this colour. But notice we're not colouring in as we did when we were at school and doing a whole patch. We're actually keeping the shape of the apple. And you can see I'm grounding from the outside of the apple and flicking it in, and eventually it starts to look a very colourful apple. And you can go back to your yellow and think, oh, I didn't put any yellow there, so I'm going to add a little bit more. Actually, the yellow on top actually gives it a nice glaze and helps to This is a unique apple. I've got a couple of messy pieces, so you can tidy it up a little bit. But what fun, because you can't be wrong. That's what's good about art, you're never wrong. And you can use a darker red if by chance you have, to bring in some some more toning down in here. I'll be a little bit more serious. Just bring a bit of soft, deeper. That helps a lot. If you don't have that, you can use brown, because red and brown are very similar. And then, of course, to your stalk with your brown, again, it's the same thing. Remember the dark side, ground it and curve. Not as easy to use as the graphite, but it's still all possible. Don't have to rub the graphite out in this case, down this side, because the brown just covers the, come right down into there. Except it is just a little bit dark. And we'll just soften this side a little bit. And then we'll just do a little bit of a sharpish line along that side. That's all you need on the light side. If you've gone a little bit too far, which I have, you can just knock that back a bit or lengthen this a little bit. So there you've got a little bit of a stalk. You can keep coming in again. You can come back the next day or in the afternoon and just keep doing a little bit of work to just fill in some of the spaces and smooth it out a little bit and make some of these longer. And I think we'll leave that apple at that. She's got a nice bump out the back here, I quite like that. So you can see how we just carefully did a very good drawing first, then did our tonal, the dark and the lights, and then went to the colour. If you miss this stage and don't do the tonal, that one here, sometimes you just don't get the final colour one working as well. It's more relaxing if you've done your graphite one. So now let's think of, we've got a little bit of an apple idea, we've got to know our apple. If we want to do a composition, I'm going to show you a couple of different compositions. One is a composition, shall I hold it this way? Is that right? So here's a composition of 3. It's the same apple drawing, but I've used different colours. So this is one with a brighter red, then I turned this into a Granny Smith, I think, is a green one. And then one more like a Delicious with the deeper red. But it's the exact same one, but look, I just turned the stalk the other way. But they're individual apples. Now sometimes that's not such a pleasing composition. So let's look at 2 other compositions. This composition has the 2 apples sitting together, and notice, I'll just find the nice highlights here, and then here the apple's been turned upside down because the underside of the apple is really quite attractive. So that's a different composition and it may be more appealing. Now there's another composition where all 3 are just touching each other. And you have the little longish stalk. You could even extend the stalk a little longer, but the middle one has been turned upside down. So you just have a very gentle, but you might like that type of composition as compared with this one where they're all individuals. But you can decide yourself. Now, if you notice, and then we're almost finished, if you notice the one in this hand, there are no shadows on the floor here. They're just sitting. If you're doing true botanical art, you generally don't have a shadow. Let's look at this one. This has a very soft shadowing and it then places the apple on a surface. So it looks as though it's on your kitchen bench or your table or on your office or your picnic. So if you do a shadow, do a very soft one. And you can pick, let's go to, I'll put a shadow on my work. You can pick, this one is a brown, so I'll pick the brown and I'm going to tip it this way and remembering the dark side. So if the light is coming from this side, that's where the shadow is going to be, on this side. So pop your pencil on the side, pick him up like this and just put a gentle shadowing, and that's all you need, just there. If you do it really, really strongly, people then look at the shadow and think it is another object. So it just needs this slight touch. Add just a little bit more if you wish to. But that's a mighty good shadow. So that's it, that's your apple. So that was enjoyable, drawing an apple and then thinking of your composition. And the image that you're now seeing is by a wonderful lady who is 100 years old, and she has done a full apple and a half an apple. Actually, well, should we do half an apple? Why not? Now let's do as the lady did in her drawing, a half an apple. So I've cut this apple in half, and please note the seed. The seed is very, very important because it adds interest. The apple itself doesn't have too much colour. Now the other element of drawing this apple is that you don't draw it flat on like this. You actually have a section of the side of the apple. So I'm going to take this apple off and pop this one here, so I can actually, I'll have to build it up a little bit to tip it. There, that's not too bad. So I can see the side of the apple and have this nice indentation and then the seed sitting there. So just find your graphite pencil again, and what shape is it? It's sort of like a bit of an oval. We're just going to draw this top surface first, and there's the indentation, and it has a little bit of a shape like that, and maybe a little bit of a shape like this. It's a bit flat, but never mind. But we must make sure that we have this sector in under here. That's the important part. And marking where your seed is, and a little bit of a shape around, and some line work in there, but very soft. And this is going to be, now if we make this the dark side, remember we did the same thing, dark side, then you can just shade in under here, so it looks as though it's in under the apple. A lot of those extra lines then start to disappear because you're actually shading in around them, so it doesn't matter too much. Make this a little softer, but there won't be too many highlights on this side, deeper in under there. Now the seed is the rather interesting one because he must have a highlight. So shade in around this part and just leave a little white dot. So this is the dark side, remember, so shade more width of the darkness here and just a little bit of an outline. Much better than just a dark blob like that. Just keep that little bit of a light line. And it's a funny looking apple, looks as though somebody sat on it, but it doesn't matter. Now, you do need, even though this doesn't look as though there's much colour on there, you do need to add a little bit of shading. So just a little bit of shading in places. But make sure that edge is clear. A little bit of shading, again, keep to the shape. And you might bring a little bit of shading up here on this top edge. Now you can, if you like, on top of this, you can actually put in some of your colour, because that always adds. So you can start with the graphite, and then you can actually build some colour in on top of that. So look, it's your drawing. You do whatever you like. And if you say it's an apple, it's an apple. So that's what's the fun about drawing. It's always good. And I did have a brown. Just bring a little bit of brown in there if you wish to. Just a few funny little lines. And it's not the best, but it doesn't matter. So then in your composition, when you have this particular one here, you could actually have one of these as a part of that apple, the cut apple. So do enjoy. And when you finish drawing, of course, you can eat it if you like. Now, the next one is for, I can't remember the right words we should say, but next time you come, we'll do leaves. So looking forward to it then.